Finally, I'm here live. What's going on, my people? Thank you for tuning in, Profe Gallo. In this video, I will discuss a comparison between the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, and Mexico. And I will be specifically covering Santo Domingo and Quito and Puebla. Follow along.
No more, so I left the matrix.
And my money just tripled. I had a good time and it cost me a little. So I found peace, tranquility, faith in my abilities.
I couldn't fake no more, so I left the matrix.
So, like I said, I will be discussing why these countries, but why am I choosing these countries? Why? Well, for starters, I have residencies in these three countries. So that's why I am covering these three countries, because I have spent some significant time in these three countries. And I wanted to give you all an idea, a comparison between the three. Now, in this comparison, I'll be looking at 5 factors, right? These 5 factors are like people, culture, food. That's one factor. Another factor is immigration. The third factor is affordability. The fourth factor is conveniences. And the fifth factor is comfortability as a Black man. Because my experience as a Black man is a different experience that some of you all would have, depending on your background. So let me focus on the Dominican Republic first. So the Dominican Republic, I spent a significant time there. I spent part-time there. I spent, maybe you could say, part-time about 1.5 years, and then full-time 2 years, right? So you can say 3 years there, or 3.5 years there. So with the Dominican Republic, that was the first country. I mean, let me take it back. I was in the Peace Corps, so I actually lived in another country during my time in the Peace Corps in Peru for 2 years and some change. So that was my first experience straight out of college. I was there. But since then, the first time I've lived in another country was the Dominican Republic, right? So the Dominican Republic, I went through the immigration process. I moved there, lived there for quite some time. I enjoyed living there. It was definitely a smart, for me, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life was to move out of the United States and to move there. So I did that. And definitely probably the best experience I've had living outside of the country so thus far. But let me break down the different factors. Now, people, culture, and food. The people there are awesome in the Dominican Republic. I really enjoyed the relationships that I've made. The people are nice and really want to help you out for the most part. The culture is very rich and vibrant. I really dig the culture in the sense that it fits my personality. I should say that. It definitely fits my personality, and that's why I felt out of these 3 places, I felt more at home in the Dominican Republic in comparison to the other 2 countries. So the weather is hot all year round. It's nice, but it is nice to get away for a little while to get a little fresh air, a little maybe cooler temperatures, and you can do that if you were to go to visit in the mountains like Jarabacoa or Constanza, for example. The food, I feel like out of the 3 countries, I prefer the Dominican food more, right? That Caribbean food more. I prefer that more. The only thing is a lot of those typical dishes don't come with vegetables, and I love the vegetables with everything, right? So That's the only downside I would say about the food in the Dominican Republic. I think I hit on most of the stuff with the Dominican Republic as far as that factor goes. Now, immigration. I feel like the immigration part, at least the part where I started the process in the United States, I feel like that was probably the most straightforward process out of the three countries. And people say, well, are you serious? Because people always talk about the issues they have with the immigration process with the Dominican Republic. And I can attest to that. There are some issues. But I feel like my issues were more so the portion after I received my residency visa and entered the Dominican Republic. That's where it got more complicated. For me, it was more straightforward when I went through the process with the consulate in DC. So I think that is definitely a plus for the Dominican Republic. Now, the Dominican side of immigration, definitely a lot of running around. Things are not clear. That's probably out of the three countries, the worst experience. Even though Mexico has its issues, I feel like that was the worst in the Dominican Republic. On the Dominican side, as far as that goes. Now, affordability. The Dominican Republic is affordable. Definitely much more affordable than a lot of the Western nations and a lot more expensive countries in the world. I feel like if you were earning $2,500 a month as a foreigner from a Western country, you can live very comfortably with that. The prices of things have gone up since I first moved there, most definitely, which was one of the factors why I was looking at moving to another country to not only for the price, but also to get the experience of living in another country. So the affordability is still affordable. Now, I lived in Santo Domingo, you can still live in a really nice neighborhood, a really high-level neighborhood, secure neighborhood with a gated community, with a security guard, a spacious apartment or house with, I say, $700 in Santo Domingo, you can do really well. Even at $600, you can live in a very comfortable place. So I would say that out of the three countries, the Dominican Republic, as far as housing is concerned, is probably more affordable or on the same par as the other two countries. But I feel like for luxury living, they're probably all on the same level. But I feel like maybe you can get more bang for your buck in the Dominican Republic as far as housing is concerned. And now shopping for groceries and things of that nature, things are more expensive in the Dominican Republic as far as groceries and buying items from the stores, televisions, computers, appliances. They're more expensive in the Dominican Republic because nothing is manufactured in the Dominican Republic. Very, very little is manufactured in the Dominican Republic. Most things are imported, so therefore things are much more expensive. So out of the three countries, as far as I guess buying products, it's more expensive in the Dominican Republic. As far as services, they're probably all on the same level as all three countries on the same level as far as services is concerned. Conveniences. The Dominican Republic does have a lot of conveniences, but if I were to compare the three countries, the Dominican Republic is probably the least most developed country out of the three countries. But that doesn't mean that there are no conveniences. I mean, you still have, if you like having the conveniences of suburbia in the U.S. where you want to be able to get to the stores, or you want to be able to get to parks or schools, or have a highway or road and things of that nature, the Dominican Republic has all that, but just on a lesser developed level, on a lesser tier, I would say that. The road systems can use some improvement in the Dominican Republic. You always want to have these countries, you always want to experience potholes and stuff like that. But I feel like the transportation system, the infrastructure, the amount of streets, roads, highways that are available to get from point A to point B, especially in the Santo Domingo area, they're lacking. That's why you have so much traffic, and it's just a constant bottleneck in the Dominican Republic, and people know how to drive. So it's definitely on a lesser level, right? In last place out of these three countries concerned as far as conveniences. Comfortability as a Black man. Like I said, I felt most comfortable in the Dominican Republic because it fits more of my personality, more of what I'm looking for, more of that Caribbean laid back feel, that warmth, but at the same time that energy, that you know, that sort of like that flavor that in the Dominican Republic that I feel like it's very specific to the Caribbean, which I felt more at home, and that's why I can say out of these three countries, Dominican Republic, I would feel more like a Dominican, more comfortable in the Dominican Republic than these other countries. So comfortable as a Black man, it's pretty comfortable. I think the only thing is the downside is it doesn't have anything doing with a Black man. But in the Dominican Republic, when you are a foreigner, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people will try to get over on you. A lot of people will try to scam you. A lot of people will try to get their hands in your pockets. That is the case more so in the Dominican Republic than in Ecuador and Mexico. I can definitely say that. But again, that's not everyone, but it happens more often in the Dominican Republic. For example, if you go to a store and you see something, there's no price on it, you ask the worker at the store how much that costs, it may cost 500 pesos, which is $10, but they'll say 1,000 pesos, right? $20. They'll say that to you because they can tell. Maybe they look at you, they may not be able to tell necessarily that you are a foreigner, but as soon as you open your mouth, they'll know, and they'll up that price, right? Just by me asking, ¿Cuánto cuesta ese gorro? They're already like, oh, he's not Dominican. They're going to like up the price, right? So that's the downside of Dominican Republic. I really, really hate that about Dominican Republic. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So let me run through this. So I did DR. Now let me go to Ecuador. Now, I was in Ecuador. I guess I still got a residence in Ecuador. My residency is still valid. So I've been to Ecuador many times, probably about 3 times before I actually moved there. So Ecuador is different. Ecuador for me is very similar to Peru in their mannerisms and their way they interact with one another. The people there are very friendly. They're very friendly. They're really nice. But for me, it's like a false friendly, right? Sort of like what people say about Canadians. Hey, for all my Canadians watching this video here, hey, no jab at you guys, no disrespect to you guys. But the common idea of Canadians in the United States is that, oh, Canadians are very nice. They're really nice people. They're very polite. But, and I would say most Canadians are really polite, but let me get back to Ecuador. Most Ecuadorians are very polite. But many Ecuadorians are polite with that sort of like fake politeness, right? Sort of like kind of polite, like get out my face kind of polite, you know? I have noticed that, but people there are really nice. The one thing I liked about the people in Ecuador is they're not really out to, you don't feel that what you feel in Dominican Republic where a lot of Dominicans are out to like scam you and get their hands in your pocket. You don't feel that way in Ecuador, right? But let me say this. I spent most of my time in Quito, Ecuador. So that's how it is in Quito, Ecuador. Now, if I was in the little time I was in Guayaquil, I didn't feel that. But if I was in some other small city in Ecuador, it'd probably be different, right? But I'm talking about Quito. So living in Quito, that's how it is with the people. They're not out to get over you like you feel when in the Dominican Republic. People are nice for the most part, really helpful for the most part. When they speak really soft, right? They speak really soft, and sometimes like they speak so soft. I'm like, you know how you would hear a lot of times Michael Jackson back in the day, like speak in public, he would speak really soft, and like the older Michael Jackson, right? Really soft and really like low, and that's how a lot of Ecuadorians speak. Which for me, with my hearing, you got to speak up for me, right? So I didn't like that about Ecuador, but for the most part, the Ecuadorian people are really nice, really good people. The food, I'm not a big fan of Ecuadorian food. You know, I figured for a long time, I figured that Ecuadorian food would be similar to the Peruvian food because they're neighbors, but it really isn't. Ecuador has probably a mixture of, you can say, Peruvian and Colombian food with their own twists, but it's not necessarily a good twist, right? They have food that you eat in the mountains, which is where Quito is. They have the food that they eat in the coast and food that they eat in the rainforest and in the Amazon region. And I feel like the food in the coast is better. They tend to eat more seafood and have a lot more seasoning in their food. So if you like a lot more seasoning, a lot more flavor in your food, you will enjoy the food on the Ecuadorian coast more than the mountains. Immigration. So I went through a agency in Ecuador. So the immigration part was easier because they just requested documents from me and I gave it to them. It was the first time I went through an agency for an immigration process. I didn't do that in the Dominican Republic and haven't done it here in Mexico. But I do feel that it's a little more complex in Ecuador. For example, I started the process in Ecuador. I didn't go through the consulate or anything like that. So I started the process when I got to Ecuador, my wife and I. And it's a little more complex because you have to prove your economic solvency. They take a look at not only look at whatever job you have, or they look at, you got to get a picture, they're going to look at all that too. And it has to be, apostille and all that. But if you are using economic solvency, you actually have to go to a notary center in Ecuador, make an appointment, go to that notary center in Ecuador, and with the notary, you have to log into your bank account, like log into the bank account using their computer, and then print out from that computer each bank statement. And then the notary will look through the bank statements and make sure you get the deposits are enough to cover the requirement for economic solvency immigration in Ecuador. And then they'll notarize it, legalize it, and then it'll be an official document you can use to put in your immigration packet to immigration. So that's a little more extra steps you got to take on top of getting all the documents, on top of translating the documents. So that's another step you need to take. In the Dominican Republic, I didn't have to go through all that because I did not have to, use an official translator. Like in Ecuador, I use an official translator to translate the documents. And in the Dominican Republic for the consulate, I didn't do that. What did I do to translate any documents? I think on a couple of documents, I used a translator, like one online, Rush Translate, $20 or $25 a document. You online, you pay, you upload, and then they'll get the document back to you in 24 hours. Boom. That's what I use. And a few documents that weren't translated, I actually paid for the translation at the consulate. Expensive. I think I paid I want to say $90 a document or something like that. It was a crazy amount, but I was already there, paid it just to get through the process. What else? Yeah, so there was a lot more to the process and immigration for Ecuador. Now, affordability in Ecuador is affordable. The good thing about Ecuador is it uses the currency, the US dollar, but it's not used at the same, like things don't necessarily cost the same in Ecuador as they do in the US. So the good thing about Ecuador is Ecuador manufactures some products, definitely manufacture more products in Ecuador than the Dominican Republic actually manufactures in Dominican Republic. So therefore, the cost of many products are less expensive. Things are imported, especially if they're imported outside of the Mercosur region, it's definitely more expensive. However, it's definitely it's definitely cheaper than I would say it's cheaper than the Dominican Republic. Ecuador generally is cheaper than the Dominican Republic. As far as services is concerned, like I said, I feel like the cost of services in Dominican Republic, Ecuador, and Mexico are about the same, but you will find products to be different, right? And products are probably, for the most part, cheaper in Ecuador than Dominican Republic, but probably not in all cases. Housing, I would say housing in Ecuador is, for the most part, maybe a little cheaper than it is in the Dominican Republic, but not much cheaper, just a little cheaper. I would say that. Conveniences. Ecuador, at least Quito, is much more developed than the Santo Domingo, right? Much more developed than Santo Domingo. So therefore, the conveniences are there. I mean, it's very convenient in Ecuador. Things run smoothly. There's public transportation of all different types. There's conveniences of stores and this and that. I mean, Ecuador is a pretty well-oiled machine, as far as I'm concerned. Comfortability as a black man. Ecuador has a lot of black folks, so it's not like being in Ecuador, you get like this, like the stairs, like ooh. But though Ecuador has a lot of black folks, there's not necessarily a lot of black folks in Quito. There is, but not to the extent as there are on the coast, for example. But more so, if you're a black foreigner like myself, they know you're a foreigner. They know you're not one of them, right? So you see some black folks, they'll look at you, they'll be like, you ain't one of us, but they'll speak to you, right? And I like that about Ecuadorians in general, man. Like Ecuadorians are for the most part, very warm people, and they will speak to you. But you still carry that stereotype in Ecuador where, like, maybe you'll be walking on this side of the street, some folks will cross the street to avoid you, or the ladies will hold on to their purse as they pass you, or stuff like that. Like you'll see that still, because there still is that stereotype in Ecuador. I think that for products like black hair and black skincare, things of that nature, you will find that there in Ecuador. You may have to go to a different store, but you'll definitely find that there. If you went to like hair braiding and stuff like that, you'll definitely find places there, because like I said, Ecuador and Quito has a large black population. I think one of the issues I had in Ecuador, being a tall man, not necessarily a black thing, but being a tall man, is finding a shoe size. So I really wanted to buy some shoes in Ecuador, and I cannot find shoes in my shoe size. If you wear a shoe size bigger than a 10 or a 10 and a half, you're going to have some issues finding shoe sizes in many of these countries like Ecuador. So that's a downside. All right, now let me go to Mexico. So Mexico, the people here in Mexico, I feel like are very similar to the sort of the vibe I was getting in Ecuador. But the difference between the Ecuadorians and the Mexicans here, I feel like Mexicans have much more exposure to North Americans. So therefore, they're not like, like that. But there are not a lot of black people here in Mexico. Mexico is big, right? Mexico has what 130 million people, something like that. So therefore, the Afro Mexicans are really like in 3 areas of this country, or 2 areas really, and Veracruz and the Costa Chica, which is where Guerrero and Oaxaca, that coast is located. Outside of that, there's not really maybe Chiapas, but outside of that, there's not really any significant Black populations here. So therefore, they're not used to seeing Black people, right? Look at you like this and that. So, but that's the other factor. But the people are nice for the most part. When I talk to people, when I speak to people, or say, hey, good morning, good afternoon, people are really nice. They tend to be helpful as well. The culture here, at least in Puebla, they seem like they're really family oriented here. And that may be the case. That's the case too in the Dominican Republic. In Ecuador, that could be the case as well. But for me, I feel like in Ecuador was at a lesser extent. The more family oriented in Dominican Republic and in Mexico, but still really good people. The food here in Mexico, we all know Mexican food. Mexican food is good. Definitely prepare yourself to eat a lot of spicy food, even if you're not into it. I like a little spice in my food, but not too much, right? But Mexicans are like a lot of that. For the most part, the Mexican food that we're used to having in the United States is not the Mexican food you will find in Puebla or Mexico City. Authentic Mexican food is different. I say that. Probably the best Mexican food that I had so far is the Mayan pibil. It's like a barbecue roasted pork, and that is more commonly eaten in Chiapas and the Yucatan and that Yucatan Peninsula over there. But it's like a Mayan dish, right? But it's really good. I really enjoy that. That's probably the best, for my taste buds, for my liking, the best Mexican food I've had so far. Now let me jump into immigration. Now, Mexico, it is difficult. It is extremely difficult to get a visa appointment at a Mexican consulate. Nearly impossible. Extremely difficult. I would say out of all these countries, it is the most difficult. But once you get an appointment, it's easier, but all the Mexican consulates are not in sync. They all have different requirements and different procedures. So it is complicated. I'll say that. So it could be easy, but the problem is getting a visa appointment, which is really, really difficult. I started the process of getting an appointment in January, and I didn't get one until April. And that's because I had to go to another country, basically. But once you get to Mexico, it's a little easier, right? You still have some paperwork you got to go through, but it's a little easier. I will compare it to maybe, I'll say it's easier than the Dominican Republic, but yeah, it's easier once you get in Mexico. Affordability. Mexico is tricky. Mexico is tricky. And I say that because in Mexico, I feel like in some levels, it is maybe just a little bit cheaper than the United States. When I say a little bit, that's if you're living like the high life, really luxurious, really, really great neighborhood, and shopping at US based stores and stuff like that. It can be expensive. I mean, here in Mexico, they have the same stores like Costco, Walmart, Sam's Club, Office Depot, Home Depot, and all these stores that you really find in the US, you find here, because It's just this because they're part of North American Trade Agreement. I guess that's plays a big role in it. That's why a lot of the same stores in the U.S. are here, and the costs are the same. The same cost that you have in the United States for those stores you have here in Mexico, if not a tad bit more expensive. But that fits into the convenience part. A lot of things are convenient, right? Shopping is very convenient here. But you also have the markets, right? The local markets where you can get a lot of cheap products. When you're looking at produce, like fruits and vegetables, you see I got some fruits back here. Definitely much more cheaper here than you find in the United States. And I'll say that even cheaper here in Mexico than you will find in the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic, for me, for the most part, fruits and vegetables were a little more expensive than you will find in Ecuador and in Mexico. That's because a lot of the fruits and vegetables are not produced in the Dominican Republic. As far as housing here, I would say housing is, for me, housing here it's like it's like it could be really expensive and really cheap. For example, if you were living in Mexico City, man, you're going to be paying some of the prices you pay in some cities in the U.S. Like that's real talk. But that's in the really nice areas, right? But if you go to one of the suburbs here, and like where I'm at, Angelopolis, and Puebla, it's still really nice. But you're not going to be paying those Mexico City prices, but you're still going to pay, right? If you're going to live in a 3-bedroom, 3-bath villa, you're probably going to pay $1,000. Maybe you could find something for like $800, but you're probably going to pay at least $1,000. But it's you're talking about a gated community, really nice area. Conveniences. So here in Mexico, conveniences, it's very convenient. I mean, sometimes you feel like it's so convenient that you feel like not necessarily that you're in the United States, but it's at the same level. Mexico is very developed. I would say Mexico is almost just as developed as the United States, but probably less regulated, right? So when I say less regulated, I mean a lot of stuff get by. Like some stuff, as far as maybe pollution, that may not be much of a priority as some other places I've been to, but definitely it's clean. People take care of their environment here for the most part. It's the roads and the streets. So the infrastructure here is just really good. I mean, it's developed here. So if someone talks about Mexico and put Mexico in the same boat as being a developing country, check them. Mexico is a developed country, not a developed country, developing country. It is a developed country. So let that be known. Mexico is definitely more developed than Ecuador and Dominican Republic. The cost of living here is comparable to those countries as well. But I would say, as far as products is concerned, products are cheaper here in Mexico for the most part. Cheaper than Ecuador and cheaper than Dominican Republic for the most part, the products. Services, like I said, services, the same level as, in my opinion, Ecuador and Dominican Republic. And I just broke down conveniences. Now, comfortability as a Black man. There are less Black, you're not going to find many Black people here in Mexico. Like I said before, Mexico, the Afro-Mexicans are situated mostly in Veracruz and the Costa Chica region, which is Guerrero and Oaxaca and maybe Chiapas. That's it. That's it. So out of the 120 million people in this country, you probably have maybe a couple million Black people. That's it, right? If that, right? So there's not a lot of Black people here. So therefore, you walking around here in Puebla, where you probably find people where they've probably seen a handful of Black people ever in their life. They look at you. And here in Mexico, they do the pinching thing, right? The pinching thing, pinching. So I know when I lived in Peru, they have this thing where if they see a black person, they'll like fight to pinch each other and say "negrito para ti, fuerte para mí," right? So here in Mexico, that saying doesn't exist as far as I know. But whenever I walk around, everyone is just like when I was walking around in Peru. Everyone is fighting to pinch each other, right? All fighting, giggling, fighting to pinch each other. And a young lady told me that when I asked her about that, because I was seeing that a lot. But then today I saw a young couple doing that, and I stopped them and brought them over and said, "Hey, why do you guys pinch each other?" And they both explained to me, it's like when you see a person that looks like you know, it's good luck to pinch. So there it is. So you see that for some folks not used to that, you'll really get annoyed. But the one thing I noticed here in Mexico is I felt safe. I felt safe in Mexico, but like I said, you can never be too safe in any country you are. But I definitely felt safe during my time in Mexico. But I can never feel too safe, especially where I'm like a fish in a fishbowl, where everyone is staring. Everyone, because there's literally no black people here. I've seen in my time in Puebla, I've seen like 3 black people, right? And I would say one was a tourist, and the other 2 were locals at some extent. And in this area, and that was in the center of Puebla. Where I'm at now in Angelopolis, I haven't seen any black people. I haven't seen any black people. None. So I'm not surprised, but it just shows that, you know, you get a lot of attention. So, but if you come here as a black person, don't feel bad about that you get so much attention, that people are staring and people are like, you know, hey, look, because really, like, people haven't seen black people here. There's no disrespect. It's just that they haven't, you know, it's different, right? And they're probably going to want to talk to you or ask you questions or be very curious, because it just you're different and they're curious. Why are you here? Where you from? And all this stuff, right? So that's how that goes. So I broke down the 3 different countries. Does anyone have any questions at all about my comparison between Ecuador and Mexico and Dominican Republic? Any questions about any of the factors I was looking for, like the culture, people, food, immigration, affordability, conveniences, my experiences, comfortability as a black man? Anyone got any questions about that? Cualquier pregunta sobre las cosas comparando esos 3 países? Cualquier cosa? One other thing I want to just point out is a time zone. And Dominican, I lived in the Eastern time zone in the United States, so therefore, I always like compare, like, well, I guess right now I don't do that. My base is the Dominican Republic. I consider that my base, so therefore, and my daughter's there too in that same time zone. So I always look at that time zone as like the base. So right now it's 7:23 where I'm at in Mexico, the Mexico City time. So there in the Dominican Republic, it is 9:23. So that's 2-hour difference. In Ecuador, it is 8:23, right? So there is no daylight savings in these countries. So therefore, all year round, that'll be the difference. With Mexico 7:23, Ecuador 8:23, Santo Domingo 9:23. Yep. So there you have it. I hit on everything I wanted to hit on as far as comparing these countries are concerned. I'm going to stay on a little longer just in case some of you have any questions. And now I'm just going to randomly touch on some points between the 3 countries. So, in the weather, when comparing the weather between these countries, they are all 3 very different. Now, I'm focusing on the 3 cities, right? I'm focusing on Santo Domingo, Quito, and Puebla. The very different, those three countries, or with those three cities, the climate. So let me look at this. The weather in Santo Domingo, you all know, is Caribbean, it's tropical. It's pretty much hot all year round. It cools down a little bit in the December and January timeframe, just a little bit, it cools down, right? So instead of having a high of 95 or a high of 90, you'll have a high of 85, right? It's still warm, but at nighttime, it may go down to 65, right? So it gets a little cool at nighttime, but it's still the Caribbean, still tropical. Now, in Quito, it's the same climate all year round. You have your times of the year where it rains more, which is like the winter where it rains more than other parts of the year, but it's still, high of, 70, 65, and a low of, 50 or 45, right? So that's how it is in Quito. Quito is high up. Quito is the second highest capital in the world after La Paz, Bolivia. And in feet, Quito is like over 9,000 feet. So Quito was high. 9,000 feet, that's more than 2 miles in the air, right? Quito was high. And in Quito, there are no mosquitoes, there are no flies, there are no insects. So you be in Quito, man, and you ain't got to worry about all that stuff that you would experience in the summer in the United States. So that's what I like about Quito. Quito, even when it rains a lot, it does rain a lot in Quito, especially during the winter, but it rains a lot in Quito. So people are always outside. Like, the rain is not going to stop. So people are like, look, I know it's raining, but I still need to go here. We're still going to be outside chilling. They may be outside under like an umbrella or something, or some sort of like roof, but they'll be outside hanging out with their friends, drinking, sharing a bottle of aguardiente or something like that. So that's how they get down in Quito. Now, in Mexico, Mexico is huge. So I'm gonna focus on Puebla. And Puebla is also very high in the air. I think the altitude of Puebla is like maybe I want to say about 5,000. It's like 5,000 feet in the air, I believe. So Puebla is still pretty high. It's situated between two large volcanoes. One volcano, which is volcano Popo, that volcano was actually been spitting out smoke, which is ironic because when I was in Ecuador, in Quito, Cotopaxi, which is about 2 hours away from Quito, that was also been spitting out smoke and ash. So here in Mexico, Popo, on the side of Puebla, in between Puebla and Mexico City, that's also been spitting out smoke and ash. And I'll put out the video that I have of the ash as well. But the climate here, if I can compare it to some of you guys may be familiar with, I will compare it to Medellin, right? Puebla has more of like a Medellin type of climate where it's like springtime all the year round. The hottest it gets here is about 85 degrees, which is right now, June. 85 degrees, like the hottest it gets here. And the winter here, it's much more cooler, much more compared to, like the temperature is much more similar to what you will find all year round in Quito during the winter here in Puebla. So that's pretty cool. And also here in Puebla, look, no mosquitoes. I mean, you'll find some insects, some flies, but like not like you will find in Santo Domingo or in the summertime in the United States. It's pretty cool to have such a nice weather, and it's not very humid here, which is cool. It's not like a Dominican Republic, for example, it can be very humid. Here, it's 85, but it's not a humid 85, right? It's a nice, bright 85, and then when the sun goes down, it is very cool outside. I mean, it could be in the 60s or 50s outside, very cool and nice during the nighttime. So that's the difference there. So that's the weather I hit the weather, I hit the time zones. Does anyone have any questions? Cualquier pregunta sobre esos países? Cualquier cosa? Nada. So yeah, so if I don't have any questions, and I think I hit on all the important stuff. Like I said, just to recap everything, as far as people and culture is concerned, they're all different. I think I like the Dominican Republic more as far as that concerned. But the downside of the Dominican Republic is you meet a lot of people that try to get over you and scam you and get their hands in your pocket. I would say as far as the immigration process is concerned, in the United States, I feel that the Dominican Republic has the easiest process with the immigration process in the United States. In country, I would say Mexico probably has the easiest process in country. As far as affordability, they're all very similar, but I think Mexico was more complex. So I would go with Mexico, because Mexico can be very expensive, but Mexico can also be really cheap in comparison to the other two countries. And as far as convenience is concerned, I would definitely go to Mexico. Mexico for conveniences. And comfortability as a Black man, of course, Dominican Republic. It's, of course, Dominican Republic is in the Caribbean. So there you have it. I will be going onto a more thorough video about my immigration process here in Mexico real soon. And I also make some videos about, how to open up a bank account, how to do this and that. Just some of the stuff that I've been doing in the other countries I've been in as well. And yeah, and that's it. I probably won't be doing too many videos here, like walking around or showing different sites, because I'm not going to be doing too much while I'm here in Mexico. Because at some point, when I'm finished with the different things I got to do in Mexico, I'm going to take another trip, and then I'll come back to Mexico. So there it is. If you got anything out of this video, please give me a like and share with your family and friends. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. If you have any statements, leave it in the comments. Be respectful, please. And there it is. So thank you for tuning in. Profe Gallo. Don't forget to give me a like and check out my other videos, and I'll see you real soon. Peace.